part 2 in our series. This is Shirley with the Southern Gals Kitchen. We're doing a series on milling your own grains, why we want to have whole grains, how to store whole grains. There's so many people interested in that, and I get questions. And a lot of people are just starting this process, starting this journey as a new journey. And so there is a lot to learn. When I first started, I had to do some research and study and watch YouTube videos and watch videos, read books. You just have to learn. I've been doing whole grain cooking for years and years and years, but I really hadn't gotten into, well, I've always made some whole grain bread, but I really didn't get into milling my own flour until more recently. Milling my own flour fresh is just really not ever going back. So if you're interested in milling for the health of your family, you know, when you mill it fresh and you cook it fresh, you get all that 40 to 45 nutrients that's in grain naturally. This grain by itself, every little kernel in there, little tiny kernels, have 40 to 45 nutrients in them. When you grind them up and you eat them, you're getting those when you do it fresh. When flour sits for 2 or 3 days, as we've talked about in other videos, after about 3 days, it's starting to lose a lot of that nutrition, because this grain that God created, He put vitamin E in there, and that vitamin E is what helps our whole bodies, really. This is God's grains, wheats, einkorn, ancient grains, and even modern wheat. It's not GMO like people say. That is just not true. That's a myth. But modern wheat still has all that 44 nutrients in it. It has the vitamin E in it. Now, I buy organic grains. I won't buy them where they've been sprayed with chemicals, and that creates a whole nother problem in your health. But if you buy the organic grains, you won't have those problems. The vitamin E in there will oxidize very quickly, and then you start losing that, and it oxidizes some of your other good nutrients. And so you want to grind it, use it fresh. That's the best. You get the most nutrition. If not, if you have some left over that you ground, put it in the freezer in a bag and label it, and then use that the next time. I have little bags of whole wheat and some spelt and some einkorn, because it's hard to grind exactly what you want. Generally, a cup of grain will make a cup and a half of flour, but again, I might get, you know, a fourth a cup left over, or even a half a cup, and so I will use that. I'll put it in bags and keep it. I keep all my little bags inside of a gallon bag, and so I don't lose track of them. But anyway, you can come back and use those. I even make dog treats for my dogs, my dog, and she gets whole grains too, because they're good for her, just like they are me. So we're going to talk today then about storing whole grains. A lot of people don't know how to store them. You can buy them in bags, some of them 1 to 2 to 5 pound bags. You can buy 5-gallon buckets. People do that. But you're going to have to do something with them. Now, the very best thing you can do is when you get your bag, let's say it's a 3-pound, 5-pound bag, make some room in your freezer, put it in your freezer. They say do that. Honestly, I don't do that. I used to do that, but I don't anymore. Because when you take that out, if you do that, you want to make sure that grain is super, 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 super dry before you store it, or it's going to mold on you. If I put it in the freezer anymore, I'm going to dump it on my dehydrator trays with the mesh liners on them, and I'm going to dehydrate it for a few hours to make sure it's super, super dry. You can do that, and that kills any eggs. I mean, wheat it gets little eggs on it, and those will hatch out. But one, you buy grains from a company that you trust. I have 2 or 3 companies I trust. I've read about, I'm in groups, and people get grains that have shaft and sticks and too many stones. I always sort through my grains before I mill them, just like I do white beans or anything else, dried beans. Because sometimes you'll find that little rock in there or something, but I haven't found one yet in my grains. But you could, and it'll tear your mill up. So you don't want to have it in there. But I always check it if I'm going to grind a cup or 2 cups, I'll pour them out into like a cake pan or a bowl, and I'll sift through them really well with my hands. You don't ever wash them. You want them dry when you mill them. They have to be completely dry. Again, you don't want wet stuff in your mill. But to store these, what I do is I use glass jars, and I'll either seal this up. Now, this one is not sealed. You can hear it. You take something like a Seal-A-Meal, and I have one, and it has a jar attachment. You can seal that up, and get all that air, and then that lid will snap down, and that'll kill out anything in there because there's no oxygen. You can buy oxygen absorbers. They're little blue little packets, or mine are blue, little square things. Mine come 100 to a packet. I know you probably could buy smaller bags. Once you open that 100 though, all those oxygen absorbers will start running on you real quickly. So what you want to do is either use them very quickly, and I'm talking work as fast as you can. Have your grains in your Mylar bags already ready to go, and when you have a Mylar bag, like I might have one I have them about this size, I'll put the grain in there, and I'll take my flat iron and I'll seal up, or you can use an iron too, but you seal up and just leave a little spot. Then I'll drop that oxygen absorber in and seal that up. Every time you take oxygen absorber out of a bag, out of the big bag, you put them in a jar, and you have your seal mill ready. You want it, well, you only need to seal mill. It'll seal itself. It'll take the oxygen out, and you'll hear that lid pop. That way all your oxygen absorbers don't go bad. So we'll keep them in a jar, and I get small jars, and I'll put so many in a small jar. That way when I'm getting in there, I'm not exposing all of them to air. I wouldn't put them in a big jar like this. I'd use a bunch of small jars. They'll suck that oxygen out, your lid will seal, and that way they'll stay good. You can watch a lot of videos online about how to do all that. But for the grains, I've kept grains for years in jars that are sealed up. I have bought grains in number 10 cans. They're already sealed when you buy them. Until you open that up, it's sealed, and you can open it for a short time. It's not going to get buggy because this is already, unless you're got bugs already in your supply somewhere else. That's why you want to seal everything up. Or you put your Mylar bags, once you get them sealed up, you can put them in these 5-gallon buckets. I buy these. You can just put the sealer back on there because those Mylar bags are sealed up. But rodents, they say, can still eat through those. I've never had that happen. But I'm not saying you couldn't have that happen if you got a mouse in your house and didn't know it. These snap right onto the top of your 5-gallon bucket. These come in pieces together. I get these at just local tractor supply places, or you can get them at Lowe's and Walmart's and online and all kinds of places. On the top of your bucket, use a rubber mallet to really push it down. You don't want to use a hammer on it because you'll crack it. If you crack it, it's not going to seal. So be careful with it. Rubber mallet works good. Then you put this lid on. This is on your bucket. And then this lid, this flame lid, goes on and off. Really easy to get in and out of your bucket. Now, if you got a bucket that you're not going to get in and out of, it's going to be, let's say you're doing long-term storage, then you could just put those snap-on lids on there. And those snap-on lids, there's a tool you can get. It's a little hook thing. I should have brought it in here. Really inexpensive, but you can snap those snap-on lids off with that. And that will seal it because you already got your Mylar bag sealed, and that snap-on lid fits real tight. It's just real hard to get off. These are easy to get off for things that you want to. I keep my dog food and cat food in these buckets with Mylar lids because it keeps bugs and things out. It's just so easy. Some people keep ground flour and things in them, but again, if you're doing whole grain flours with all the nutrients in there, you're starting to lose nutrition unless you can keep that bucket in your freezer, which might be kind of hard to do. Keep mine in bags. So there's many ways you can store. What you want to do when you store flour, when you grind it, it's good to get it 2 or 3 days. After that, refrigerate it for maybe a week, and then anything after that, put it in your freezer. I just go immediately to my freezer, and that way it's done. They say 6 months, but I've kept it longer than that. And I've kept my grains in jars for a long time. Again, if you put an oxygen absorber in there, you'll hear that. They'll quit making that sound. It'll just stay down like when you can jelly. Then this is going to be sealed, or you can use a jar sealer from one of those machines. And it's going to be sealed and it's going to keep for a long time. And these are pretty to set up on a shelf somewhere or something like that. A lot of people do that, grains and beans both. So that's really about all there is to storing them. And you want to use your grains, your freshly milled grains. When you have a recipe that calls for, let's say a regular recipe, calls for 2 cups of flour, let's say a cup of flour. you add 2 extra tablespoons of your freshly milled flour. Generally will make it right, because your freshly milled is not compacted, it's light, it's airy. So you're going to add about 2 extra tablespoons per cup. And that's kind of when I'm developing recipes, that's kind of the rule that I go by. And I like grams when I'm making bread and things like that. I really prefer having my scale and doing grams, because freshly milled flour, bought flour, flour that I've milled and kept in my freezer, they're all going to be different. If you just dip, level, pour, dip and measure off, that's going to be more compacted than if you kind of shuffle it in like I've showed you in videos. You got to have grams or you can really mess up some recipes. Now, things like einkorn cookies, I don't worry about grams. I just shuffle my whole grain into my cup, and my recipe on that would say whole grain. Whether it's freshly milled or bought, it's going to be a whole grain flour, and you shuffle it into your cup, you're going to be okay. Bread and things like that is where you really need that scale. I would invest in a scale. They're very inexpensive. They last a long time. If you want to get into long-term food storage, you might want to invest in some Yama lids, some buckets, oxygen absorbers, Mylar bags. That's just up to you. Or you can just use your jars and some oxygen absorbers or that jar sealer. Or you can just buy them in a can and they're already sealed. But buy organic, because you don't want those pesticides. People have linked that to cancers, and they say we all have it in our bodies because we eat that. Not unless you're eating whole grain organic all your life, you've got it in your body. But the more that you get, the more buildup, the worse it's going to be. And eating whole grains, because they're so full of fiber, they'll help start cleaning your body out. They'll clean the toxins out of your body. Fiber is, I mean, we all know fiber is good for you. You get fiber in your whole grains. And you get all that fiber in freshly milled. Sometimes I'll sift a little bit of fiber out, knowing I'm losing a little bit of nutrition, but there's still about 80% of it in there if I want to lighten up the load for a biscuit. For example, there's things called, I'll go back to this first. There's hard red wheat, there's hard white wheat. The hard reds and whites are good for your bread, same rise. Your soft red, your soft white is what you use for biscuits. Now I like soft summer, winter berries, white berries. And I buy those, and that's how I make biscuits now, because if you buy look at biscuits, flours in the store, the kind that's designed for biscuits and cakes and pie and things like that, it's going to be soft, white winter wheat. Well, you can buy those berries and grind your own. But to make a biscuit or something really light, I'm going to sift a little bit of that bran out of there after I get through making it. I'll show you that in videos when I make the biscuits. But that's really how you get some of that out. And so you're going to lose a little bit, but you're going to keep about 80%. You're not going to sift that much out. And you can make light, fluffy, tender biscuits. So I hope this will help you. And I'm going to be doing part 3 of this series. And you can look for that. Talk to you later.